We'll start in 3 minutes. Thank you. Okay, if you can find your seats, we'll get this party started.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the third and final Cracker Barrel. As they say, all great trilogies come in threes, so we appreciate you sticking with us. Hey, I got one chuckle. You know, I told that joke earlier in the week and no one laughed, so I'm going to keep doing it until someone... Yeah, just Chris. So thank you. Thanks to the legislators for being here. It's been a long session. We appreciate you sticking with us. This is the final one. We've got a big couple of weeks coming up. This last week was really exciting, so we look forward to your updates. And then thank you to Dr. Bowman and Western Dakota Tech for having us. So I'm going to turn you over to Chris. We're going to let everyone here today give their 5-minute update because there's been so much that happened this last week. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. So before we get started, we generally let, since Western Dakota Tech is so gracious to let us use this fantastic facility, Dr. Bowman, you have some words of wisdom for us this morning?
Okay, first thing is knowing how to turn on the microphone. That is wisdom. Secondly, I don't actually have any wisdom personally other than the wisdom that I think surrounds us in the room. I just really want our legislators to know that I appreciate, and I know that the folks who have come today have a very high level of appreciation of the work that you all do on behalf of South Dakotans, and particularly those of us who live in the Black Hills area. It's a hard few weeks that you put in, and you're doing it really for the best interests of everyone here, and it's a balancing act. So I think the wisdom is figuring out how to make the best decisions to benefit, knowing that not everybody is going to agree with everything, but still having the courage to do it. And I just want to acknowledge that Dr. Rankin from School of Mines is also here with us. And I want to thank our Western Dakota Tech Board Chair, Kurt Pokart, for coming out this morning as well. So at any rate, that's all that I have. I think technical education and other options in this part of the state are second to none. So I just appreciate the support that you all have given in those areas, but also in the other things that benefit us.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. Also, like to recognize current and any past councilmen, senators, Partridge. I saw you sneaking in. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you for your service. And again, I was going to say Dr. Rankin, but everybody, thank you. Current council members, potential mayors in here, anybody? Oh, there's one right there. So, all right. So before we get rolling, I just want to go over the ground rules. Friendly reminder that this is not a debate. We cannot guarantee everyone an opportunity to respond. This applies to both panelists and audience members. If audience members have follow-up questions, we ask that you use the question submittal form located here or in the back of the room. Please do your best to include a bill number. If you're not sure, please find a volunteer and they will assist you to track that down. Please do your best to submit questions, not comments. Submissions without a question will not be read. In order to keep the conversation moving, we ask legislators to limit to responses to 3 minutes. And again, the yellow light, you will have 30-second warning. Red means you're out of time, and I will cut you off quickly. Just kidding. It depends what kind of mood I'm in or if I'm paying attention. I'm just kidding, Senator. Come on now. There you go. Got her to smile. And there will be a limit of 4 responses by legislators per question, just to try to keep us on track. I do want to say, if you're hungry during the show, there's some donuts back there. Thank you, Garth, for that. It is a show, the Mike Derby Show. So anyhow, since it's the last one, I got to throw some levity in here, and we need to be cut off by 11 because I have a flight to Florida at noon, so we got to get out of here. Anyhow, so I do want to thank the volunteers. My name is Chris Karn. I'm a volunteer. I do not work for Elevate, but I do want to thank the Elevate volunteers. So if you could please clap your hands for them. They do a great job. All right, so we'll start off, and I was writing down everybody as they walked in the door, so we will go from whoever came in first gets to go first. Representative Mike Derby, District 34.
Good morning. Mike Derby, District 34, covers West Rapid City, and this is my 5th term, and I'm currently chairing House Appropriations. And I did bring a couple props this morning. On the House floor, you're not allowed to use props. I don't know if you knew that, but I did bring a couple props this morning. I'll give you a little update on where we're at in the appropriations process, and then a couple big items we're looking at. But, you know, we spent most of the session listening to budgets. We just recently did our revenue setting meetings where we set the future revenues. We're dealing with fiscal year 23 budget, and one-time spenders. And fiscal year 23 ends June 30th, and then July 1st, fiscal year 24 starts, and then we're dealing with ongoing issues at this time. So we're in that process where we've taken the caucus. We're really working hard with the House caucus this year for positions, and it's worked out really well this year. We've, especially on one-time spenders, we prioritized them. We actually had green, white, red, and we as appropriators kind of marched down that path. And what that means as chairman of appropriations, sometimes I have to set aside my personal opinion or favorites and push and be an honest broker and push forward those caucus agendas. And that's worked really well. One of the things I did this year, I've gotten pretty good at passing bills. Last year I had 5 of my bills that I primed signed by the governor. But this year as chair of appropriations, I decided not to introduce any bills. And 2 things. It allowed me to focus on appropriations because it takes a lot of time running from House chamber to chamber and committee to committee. And then secondly, you know, I got nothing. You can't hold a bill or kill a bill or ask me, you want to trade something for my bill? I took that off the table, and it's worked really well. The big issues in appropriations are obviously in front of House appropriations. We had the 3 tax cuts, the general tax reduction from 4.5% to 4.2. It's about 104 million. We had the governor's repeal on the food tax, 102 million. And then we had the property tax bill that Representative Ladner put together, and that was slightly less, in the 70 million range. So we had them all lined up in front of House appropriations, and we did the reduction first. And the caucus, that was the caucus position. Let's move forward with that. And we did that. We passed that. The governor and the lieutenant governor actually came up and testified in committee for the repeal of the food tax. And we had told the governor the day before what we were going to do, so there's no surprises. That's one thing I've tried to live by, is no surprises, kind of a palms up, here's what we're gonna do. She did come and testify, and we did kill that bill. Then we got to the property tax, and actually, when I talked about being chair, I actually was one of the architects of that property tax reduction out of the summer study, and got that passed, and got it through the executive board, and then I handed it off to Representative Ladner. And the issue there was, at the time, it was going to be a reduction in the school levy and then backfilled with general funds. That was kind of a hold harmless for the counties and the schools. But what we found out is there's 5 school districts in the state that don't get state aid, and that would have a negative impact on them. And then tax increment districts, they utilize those funds for a period of time to pay off the loans for the tax increment districts. So we had developers that had residential tax increment districts that were very concerned that they wouldn't have the ability to pay off their tax increment financing in a timely manner. So we pivoted to a $300 per be a credit on your property tax. Well, that died. The Senate has resurrected it to be $425. And so we've got dueling ideas at this point in time we have to reconcile. But last, in closing, I think a lot of you, I did receive my assessment notice, and my property on Park Drive went up 22.47%. And I have handouts that talk about 101 assessments and property tax. And we have a county commissioner here that's having meetings coming up. So get educated, and I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, Representative Derby. Up next, representing District 32, will be Representative Becky Drury.
Good morning. Yes, as he said, Becky Drury, District 32, which is the heart of Rapid City. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple bills that I still have left coming to the House floor on Monday. One of them I really don't want to get up and talk about, and you're going to find out why here in a minute. The first one is SB 70, and that sets out more child protection for children when they have to testify in the courtroom. And of course, these are children that have been abused physically, mentally, sexually. They may have been trafficked, and then it's helping them in the courtroom because their accuser is right there looking at them. It gives them some protections. I think that's a great bill, and I'm really proud to just be able to have my name on the bill. The second one is revising certain provisions regarding the crime of rape and provide a penalty thereof. And who doesn't want to get up on a House floor and talk about that? Everybody does, right? And it's uncomfortable, but just saying no is not enough in South Dakota to charge someone with rape. If the woman just says no, that's not enough. So this bill really deals with consent and what is consent and what is not. So it's important, I think. It's very important for the prosecution, people that are prosecuting these cases, to have the tools to prove that, and it takes away none of the defendant's rights. And then SB 174 is a ban to ban the bans. And we're not talking about a rock band here. And it's a way for us to ensure that when a new development or something goes in, that local ordinances cannot say, well, you can't put gas pipelines in, or you can't put propane tanks, or you can't put whatever. You can't ban those. So those are the couple that I have coming up. And when Representative Derby was talking about things he passed, I was fortunate enough to be the prime sponsor on House Bill 1109, and that has to do with business increment districts. We passed it in state tax on the House, went to the Senate floor, it passed there, went to the governor's desk. And as I was preparing to pitch another bill, and on the House floor, I heard from the speaker, he read off the letter from the governor saying she had vetoed it. There's going to be a strong contingency, and we are going to try to override that veto. Because you can't say you want local control and then not let people have local control, which is what a business increment district does. It lets the cities or the municipalities have the control. And one of the other reasons she stated was it was going to put it at, the bid tax now is at $2. It's been there since 2005. It's never raised since 2005. She stated that it's going to go up to $4 or 4%, and that's simply incorrect. It can go from $2 up to 4 or 4%, not mandated. Again, it's local control. They could leave it at $2 forever and ever, put it at $2.25 to $2.33, whatever the local people wanted to do. So I don't think that was correct in her statement. And you have to remember that not every hotel in South Dakota has a bid. They're not all part of the bid. There's been concerns about people that come in and they have medical reasons. Well, there are really motels around, especially Rapid City and Sioux Falls and these areas, that will give people medical rates to take care of that. So what I tout, and it's probably from city council days, is local control. I have an example that in 2005, maybe motels were at $50. So the sales tax on that would have been $2. And that might be why they set that bid in 2005 at $2. But if you jump up to 2010, a hotel probably cost $100. The state would receive $4. Bid districts, $2. In 2016, the sales tax went up to $4.50, so we have a $150 room. So the state gets $675, the bid districts get $2. There is a pattern here if you're seeing it. So what I'm saying is, as the room prices go up, the state receives a larger portion, but we have limited and capped those bid districts out. And I'm out of time, so I can't tell you all the wonderful things they do, but I'm sure it'll come up later. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Drury. Up next will be Representative Massey, representing District 33.
Well, good morning, everyone. I appreciate everyone coming today. It's good to see a good turnout. As I was introduced, my name is Kurt Massey. I am the representative from District 33, which is kind of a horseshoe on the west side of Rapid City, mostly kind of outside of the city limits, but it does take in some of the city limits. Now, this is my first term, and I'm very honored to be able to serve and go to Pier. But I worked very hard to get myself on some very important committees. I got myself on House Judiciary so I can help keep our state and our communities safe. And I got myself on House Taxation so I can work at keeping our taxes low, or hopefully we can even lower taxes more. Now, a couple things about House Judiciary. We've had a lot of bills that came through. One was HB 1062, which was to clarify the convening of recount boards for primary elections. That was signed by the governor. The main item with that was to allow for a date selected by a judge when necessary to avoid undue conflict with the electoral process and ensure a timely facilitation of a recount. I think it's very important that we do protect our elections. We've had other bills that came through that we did pass that have strengthened our elections, and South Dakota, I think we have good solid elections, but we're going to keep them that way. There's also House Bill 1170 that we did pass through that established mandatory sentences for certain driving while under the influence violations. Basically, it strengthened and added more time that people were convicted of 4th, 5th, and 6th DUIs to spend more time in prison to keep some of these people off the streets. We heard some great testimony on, some sad things to hear about accidents and injuries and even deaths that people driving under the influence have caused who probably should not have been out driving. And so House Taxation was very busy. Representative Derby kind of went over a lot of what I was going to say too, so I'm not going to go over too much more. But, in House Taxation, we did pass through those 3 tax reduction bills to repeal the state tax on food, to exempt $100,000 of the home value from the school levy, which would have been backfilled by the state. So the schools would have been covered on that. That did get changed to a $300 tax credit. And then there was 1137, which lowered the state tax from 4.5 to 4. Of course, that went into House Appropriations, and we did discuss that as a caucus, and we came out with the 4.5, lowering the state tax from 4.5 to 4. Of course, that did get amended up to 4.2. But anyway, as you're probably aware, it came back from the Senate with a sunset clause of 2 years. So in the House, we weren't real crazy about that. We think that tax reductions would be something permanent. Of course, the Senate did pass a bill that would look at a $425 credit for homeowners with an owner-occupied status. So there's going to be some talk amongst the House and the Senate to kind of sort these things out. But one thing, that I'm very strong on education. My wife's a teacher. My mother taught 2nd grade for 41 years. So one thing I've talked about when I've been in Pier is the fact that I think we really need to separate what is called the big 3. People will talk about, the governor will talk about giving 5% to the big 3, which is healthcare, state employees, and education. Education is to me different than healthcare and state employees. So I think we need to look at education separately. I think it's very important that we split that out. So I've kind of kept that funding of education in the forefront when I talk about it. I think it's very important that we continue to talk about it and see what we can do for teachers. I know teachers work very hard. They put a lot of effort and a lot of work into their classrooms, and I do believe we should give them more than just a 5%. So the key is to keep talking about it and keep those conversations in the forefront. So anyway, that's a summary of a couple things that I've been involved in my committee work, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as the day goes through. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Massey. Up next from District 32, Senator Helene Duhamel.
I'm caught off guard. I didn't realize I was going to speak just to answer questions. But I'm glad to talk to you about some of the big things. You know, it's a marathon, and I think I can speak for all of us, we're exhausted. Many of us have a full-time job, and then we're back and forth every single weekend to the legislature. We're doing our very best, trying to fight for Rapid City, the Black Hills, Western South Dakota, and the state of South Dakota, and we're almost there. But this is a really critical week. A lot can happen right now. On the House floor tomorrow, very big bill if you've been paying attention. We're looking for those 104 million ARPA dollars that are sitting there waiting. We've asked that the state think about, the legislature's thinking about moving that up into water for our state. And I've been a water warrior, trying hard to let us think forward about our needs in our state. So that's something that the House will vote on. The governor would like us to sit on that for one more year when she has a plan. But my fear is it has to be allocated by December of '24. We come back into the legislature next winter, January, February, March of '24. We have to figure out how to spend that by December of '24. That's $104 million sitting there. We have one more year. The likelihood is we'll spend it correctly. So many needs in our state. Going west, we want Missouri River water. Going east, Sioux Falls wants a second Lewis and Clark. Going north and east, you have Aberdeen, Winds, Webb. Mitchell says they need water. Everybody is looking for water. And if you look at the global picture and the national picture, everybody's fighting for water in our country. I think that we have this year elevated the concern of counties, these unfunded mandates. Counties have really taken it in the shorts, and it's time that we realize counties need help. I was really disappointed a couple of our jail bills failed Thursday in the House, and nothing is over till it's over, but if nothing else, we raised awareness. We had a summer study on incarceration needs. We're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into our state prison, but we're not doing anything to help counties. And with Senate Bill 70 and 73, that trickled down, and all of that fell on the backs of counties. So we were looking for some relief to help counties who already regionalized jails come together and smartly figure out a way to do things better. And the only way you build jails is property taxes. I get it, everybody's really sensitive about property taxes. That's why we brought something called a regional jail authority, where multiple counties could get together as a region to try to figure out how to more smartly and fairly build and operate these jails. So we haven't been successful in that. I was always looking for $50 million. When you have money, you take care of your house. And these are needs in our state, and really unfunded needs. We're just hoping that at some point the legislature, maybe a summer study going forward, but what do we need to do to help our counties who've been held down ever since the Jankel years of the 3% plus growth? So counties are in a terrible way. Let's see here. We're looking at trying to really help the taxpayer, the college goer, the Opportunity Scholarship, more funding for that, 100% tuition reimbursement for those who are in the National Guard, a tuition freeze. This would be our 4th year. We're hoping that if we really need to grow our workforce, keep our kids here, keep them in state where they can afford their education. Those are some of the things. Yes, tax cuts are the big discussion. I myself feel like we don't know what the future looks like. Let's hold on. Let's wait a couple of years. Let's make some big investments that we have. And then in 2 years, we'll know better. We also potentially on the ballot, in 2 years, we'll have the grocery tax removal. So anything we do now, if that comes in and almost everybody votes to remove their taxes, not really paying attention to how we have to pay for our needs, the state could be in a crisis. And that's the reason for the sunset. If in the Senate, we believe if we need to do something, we have to have a sunset in there in 2 years where we can look at the situation and decide if we still have the money available. The Legislative Research Council did an analysis. They backed out inflation. They backed out all those federal dollars that are still circulating, and our sales tax has actually decreased organically. So we need to be very careful right now. Thank you for your time. I'll answer questions.
You know, Senator, for not being prepared, that's pretty impressive. Up next, from District 32, Representative Steve Duffy.
Thank you, folks. I'm Steve Duffy from District 32. I'm first year. I got a little bit of a cold, so if I'm not going to be too talkative today. I'm down at that end for a reason. I'm trying to stay away from everybody. But anyway, a little bit about me. First term, I've been in District 32 since I got out of college. I've lived there for about 41 years. I'm on Transportation and Commerce. Commerce is the committee that I really wanted to be on. I said I'd take anything else if I could have commerce. I really am trying to focus on creating environments where people can create jobs in this area so young people can stay here. It's about as simple as it gets for me. I really want that group to come here. You go to Sioux Falls, they have the secret sauce. They really have, this layered economy. And so really, that's the roadmap. I hope we can find some version of it, but that's what I focus on. The priorities, the caucus priorities, as Representative Derby alluded to, it's really important because otherwise there's just a giant fight all the time. But it also, it's become aware to me that we have a lot less people in the West, so the priorities are way heavier to the East. And that maybe is the way it should be. It's not the way I like it. So, you know, I'm hoping we can find ways to get some of our priorities, maybe not, obviously not this year, but next year. Representative Drury outlined that bid tax. You know, all I heard on that was it's just a Rapid City bill. It's going to penalize the rest of, or Black Hills bill. It's going to penalize the rest of that $2 fee. You know, it's a permissive deal. You don't have to do it. So I don't know why people are willing to pick on us when, okay, we do have a lot of tourism, but they can pay it and you don't have to charge it if you don't like. I was pretty excited about surf. You know, I think that's good. I don't know, the governor seems to be in a, I don't think I'll just stop there on that. It is Sanford Underground Research Facility. Sorry about that. That's $13 million we asked for the surf mine, so they can do some new project, build out some new lab space in the mine. The bigger issue is if they don't get this money, they're going to have to chop down that equipment, and it all comes up in like 10-foot elevators. It takes $15 million or something to bring it out of that hole, and then we'll get the money at some point. Because to be competitive, neutrinos is real science. You know, so, you know, somebody's going to figure this out, whether it's us or it's the Chinese, and it is important. So I hope, and it does give, I mean, we're a agriculture, tourism, but this is high science. And so I'm really excited about that. And I really talked to as many people as I could, people that don't even like me, but, which is a fair number. But anyway, that's really about, that's about what I'm up to. So I'm gonna sit over there and I might not say too much more, but I might. Thank you.
I was kind of wondering about that, Representative Duffy, whether people like you or not, because you and Representative Olson are kind of over there on your own island, kind of loaded on this end. So speaking of Representative Olson, Jess Olson is up next from District 34.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out. It is nice to see a big crowd, like Representative Massey said. So I'm in my 5th year, I'm my 3rd session or term, so 5th session. And I've served on tax committee for 5 years, and I'm the vice chair of tax committee. I also serve on local government. We've had a few election bills come up in local government, but that's been pretty quiet. Taxes, where we've had, as you've all been aware, the big conversation about taxes. So we were able to hear all 3 major tax cut bills. And I wanted to kind of highlight how I frame those bills, just so I hope it's helpful for you. So on the property tax bill, when we originally heard it, it was the first $100,000 on your property tax. And based on the mill levy and some other figures, it would be about $300 for your home. And then it went through some different iterations, and now you've heard the Senate has a $400 on your taxes. So when you compare that to your grocery tax cut that was proposed, that would have saved about $100 per person. Now maybe it would save me $125 and my 8-year-old $75 a year on their taxes, okay? So the way that I distinguish those two, I have 5 people in my household. So on the grocery tax bill, I was gonna save about $500 a year. On the property tax bill, as a homeowner, I was gonna save about $300. Now it might be $400 in the Senate proposal. And then you have the general sales tax. So that general sales tax at the 0.2 or 0.3, it's 0.02, 0.03, it's a half-cent sales tax cut. You as a consumer are gonna have to spend about $50,000 on consumable goods to save $100 on that calculation. So when you think about the difference, I think about the people who we're trying to directly support and help. So a person who's maybe living alone in their home and is having a hard time paying for their home, or the taxes are hard, they're probably gonna benefit more from the property tax cut, because they are, maybe you think of your elderly grandma, 80 years old, they wanna stay in their home, they maybe are gonna save $100 on groceries, but they'd save $300 to $400 on that property tax, and they certainly aren't gonna spend the $50,000 on consumable goods to get even 100, let alone $150,000 on consumable goods to get to the 300 property tax, right? So that's gonna help that family. But I think the grocery tax is like a working family tax, right? That's because regardless of if you own a home or not, if you have a family of 3, 4, 5, that's where you're gonna get that targeted benefit. So those are both targeted sales, or both targeted tax cuts, one to property owners, one, to families basically, and any of us would save on that. So the sales tax is more of a general, the sales tax cut at the 0.2, 0.3 is gonna be more of a business tax cut. So businesses will save, it's also easier for businesses to implement. So that was part of the conversation that was had about the grocery tax. And it will be on the ballot in 2 years, potentially, they've already started that. But that one, the general sales tax for any business that's practicing is they're gonna be able to go in and change that percentage. So it's just easier for them to do, and it's across the board. And so it also doesn't affect our state budget as much, because that we're trying to look at broad-based taxes to maintain that AAA status. So just as Senator Duhamel said, her preference is maybe we don't do a tax cut and we fund our needs. I don't disagree with that, and I lean more towards the grocery tax one. So I'm pleased to see that the financial conversations between both the Senate and the House tend to be leaning towards making sure Medicaid is funded at not just 90%, but they're looking at 100% for the first time, and that'd be nice. Kind of getting back from, they've all experienced cuts 10 years ago. The schools are funded, and then we're looking at some sort of relief. So it's kind of across the board, and I think what I would encourage you to do is please reach out, because that is one thing we aren't hearing from. We aren't really hearing from a lot of constituents on which of these 3 tax cuts matters the most to you. So I would continue to urge you to keep reaching out, keep communicating on that, because this is the last week when that's gonna happen. And then I'm just gonna talk about a couple of things on bills very quickly. So my focus tends to be on stronger families and on workforce development. So I had a couple of bills around that. One was an idea to help adoptive families get medical insurance support. And that's going to be a work in progress. I did a home study bill a couple of years ago. I worked on that for 3 years. This is going to be a similar thing. We had an exploratory idea. We pitched a bill. DSS and I are in talks. And so we'll be connecting those families with more supports and seeing if we can work on that. The other workforce bill I had was to allow individuals who have felonies to be allowed to apply for licenses and make that more broad sweeping across different boards. Because they've done that in other states and seen that that really works to give a little more discretion to boards. You don't want to have public safety risk, but if you have nonviolent felonies, we want to get you to work and to keep increasing your work and increasing your licensure so you're really contributing more.
Representative Olson, your time has expired.
I know,
Thank you.
and so I'm going to just say one last thing on that.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
Okay, well, summer studies are up, so please contact us about your ideas for summer studies, and I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker this morning will be Senator Mike Dietrich from District 34.
Good morning. Good to see you all here. What a beautiful day out there. And I look out here and I think, well, this is our family. This is our community engagement family. Most everybody here are repeat offenders and come to these all the time. And although we don't agree with each other, we're a family and we do that disagreement respectfully. And so it's really a privilege to be part of this process. And thank you for that. Almost everything was covered. But I'll give you a few quickies on procedure, what's going on. We have 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday left to take any legislative action that we can take. Well, there's always a way through our rules to do something a little unique if we have to, but 4 days is what it takes. So you're gonna see, if you're interested in watching the session, you're gonna see all kinds of things going on that are not the normal. It's not gonna be following the same procedure. And you'll see people oftentimes maybe voting no on a bill that they voted positive before, or a bill that you thought they might support, or vice versa. Well, that's because if the House has a difference and the Senate has a difference, we got to reconcile those differences or the bill dies. Oftentimes it just dies because we can't agree to disagree, or we can't agree to agree, and then so it'll die, so we can't get enough votes. Or if we agree to changes, then it goes back to each House to vote to concur in those changes. In order to be on that little conference committee, there's one no vote, one yes vote, and then one third person on there. Typically, we try to make sure it's balanced with the yes, no, and then a Democrat, or have a mixture of the party in there. And so that's how we try to make it happen. So you might see things that surprise you, but there's a whole different process and strategy going on. Things that we've done, we've made a lot of progress. I'm really proud of what we've done so far this session. We've worked on election integrity from the beginning to the end. We've worked on testing and validating the voting machines, the ballot machines before the election. We've worked on cleaning up the voter rolls before the election. We've worked on poll watchers who come and watch the election and validate it. We've worked on auditing after the election. We've worked very closely with county auditors throughout the state and many parties, lots of input on how do we continue to ensure that South Dakota has a good election integrity, which I believe we do. And we've adopted a lot of things. We killed a lot of things, and we merged some things. So not everybody's happy, but we've got a pretty good body that's come out in that. Public safety related to our part of the country, fire safety is really important. And we have 3 bills that affect us out here. We've got the wildland fire training facility for Rapid City was approved the other day on the Senate floor. I think it'll make it all the way through. That builds a facility out here for training for people from all over South Dakota and maybe outside the state too, to train. A really awesome deal. Then we have a facility down in Hot Springs that needs servicing, and then we'll fix that up. And most importantly, along fire management is the National Park Forest Service Management Plan for the next 10 years. And I think we're going to have that funded for South Dakota to put some money into participating with the federal government to make sure that the procedures are right, that the public is heard, that our voices are heard as local people who live and work and benefit and protect the Black Hills. So 26% of the Black Hills is in Wyoming, and Wyoming's already put money into it to help ensure that they have a local voice in that process. Very important for economy, tourism, safety. One of my fun bills was pharmacy benefit managers. So that bill was related to get transparency in drug pricing, retail drug pricing at the counter, and protecting the small town pharmacies. we've lost so many small town pharmacies in South Dakota that there are, there's a lot of, probably about 19 counties where the closest pharmacy is 60 miles away. And part of that is because of the chains taking over and requiring that they mail their stuff to you instead of you going and seeing your pharmacist, who will deliver it to you on Sunday if he's taking care of you. UPS doesn't give you consultations on Sunday, I don't believe. But that bill has made it through. That's good. Prisons, we haven't heard much talk about prisons. Ton of money, $600 million probably overall. We need to put $200 or $300 million in the bank, and just keep building that fund so we don't have to borrow or bond. And we're in a position to make great inroads on doing that. And so one of those facilities will be a women minimum security prison out here to help those reenter. A large population of our female inmates are from West River. And so they found that if we can get them in a community where we can staff it, and where they can have access to their local support structure, their family, their friends, and the treatment options that we provide, they re-enter society in a more productive way and don't have as much recidivism. Plus, the kids of those mothers have an opportunity to have that mother influence, even though they are in prison. And so my time is up, but thank you. Thanks for participating, and I'll stand by for questions. Have more stuff if you want to talk. And if you want to dance through the rules, here they are.
Thank you, Senator Diedrich. Okay, we will move into questions. Thank you, all legislators, for your comments. They're very well appreciated. All right, so the first question we have this morning is from Julie Kopp with Black Hills Works Advisory Committee. Julie would like to thank you for your question. This is regarding House Bill 1167 and Senate Bill 105. And so here we go. Both bills are supported through testimony given in committee hearings by the Community Support Providers of South Dakota Healthcare Association, Avera Long-Term Care and Traumatic Brain Injury, South Dakota Council of Community-Based Behavioral Health, Lutheran Social Services, South Dakota Association of Healthcare Organizations, South Dakota Association of Youth Care Providers, South Dakota Alzheimer's Association, Children's Home Society, AARP, Sanford Health, and Disability Rights South Dakota. These groups gave a lot of comments to committee on why these bills are needed to help resolve and prevent what Senator Breitling said in his committee testimony are industries in crisis right now. Can you help pass these bills? And if not, what is more compelling than the expertise of all these groups informing you of what is needed to be done now in order to do the state's work of caring for those that cannot care for themselves? I've done this a few times. That is the longest question. So if you need to have anything repeated, Representative Derby, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike Derby, District 34. Specifically, 105 had to do with annual cost reports, and this has been one of the biggest issues, not specifically cost reports, but just the whole Medicaid provider issue. And we have I think the word crisis was used, and I believe that we're behind the curve. It's a very detailed subject. I was on a work group. We're looking at additional funding for those that fall into the Medicaid provider group, community service providers, all the way down. There's at least 17 to 20 of those. And I could spend a couple hours talking about cost reports and methodology, but the governor proposed funding this group. It's 90% of methodology. And if you go to 100% methodology, which covers their costs, pretty close to 100%, it would be another additional $30 million in ongoing funds. And we've listened and heard, and then there's even a gap, enhanced services gap for a year, which is about $9 million. And we've looked and talked, and I'm here to say that there does appear to be a consensus between the House and the Senate that this is one of their top priorities. And we're still negotiating everything that we're looking at. But this is something that if these providers did not do this, the state of South Dakota would have to. And I firmly believe that these providers can do it way better than the state of South Dakota could do, and even at a greatly reduced price than the state could. So big issue, big topic. It's our responsibility, it's the state's responsibility, and I'm looking forward to a positive outcome, and I appreciate your patience. It's a long session to go through and watch all this happen, but I'm confident something good's gonna come out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Julie, thank you for the question. Next question is, what is a sunset clause? Why is it included in House Bill 1137? And do you support or oppose a sunset on a tax reduction?
Helene Duhamel, District 32 in Rapid City. I kind of brought it up. It is so hard to get a tax increase. So in the situation where we're in, where we're not sure what the future looks like, you put a sunset in 2 years, and you have a better view of how our state is performing economically, and so then it would go back up if the money is needed, or whoever's in the legislature in 2 years could decide to take it another 2 years and look, or remove a tax permanently or reduce it permanently. So the idea is just, I think, a good conservative way of looking at the future when you don't know what the future looks like, especially when you have super inflation and we still have these federal dollars circulating, billions of dollars given to our state. I think I read 14 billion. When that goes away, and it's going away, we right size what does our state look like. And all these increases that we're looking at right now, we bake those into the system. So as much as we want to help all the folks and give them 100% methodology for their work, moving forward, that's where we're at. So we have to be very careful what we do right now. I think a sunset clause is a really wise idea.
I didn't introduce myself before. I'm Mike Diedrich, District 34, Western Rapids City. I serve on State Affairs, Judiciary, and Health and Human Services Committees, and I'm the Assistant Majority Leader for the Senate. So that's my intro. Just a quick comment on that. When we're looking at budgeting and programs and enhancing programs, guaranteeing certain amounts of payments or levels of payment to programs, we're picking winners and losers based on the pie that we have at this point in time. And so one of the more rational ways to approach that is, okay, the winner, if we have to pick winners and losers at this point in time for however that pie is divided up, circumstances change. And so a lot of times it makes sense, and it makes it more politically palatable to put on a sunset clause that, okay, we're gonna do it this way, and because the circumstances say it's the right thing to do right now, but we're not certain in 2 years or 4 years or whenever it is, and we want to make sure there's an opener so we take an earnest look at it. So a sunset clause doesn't necessarily mean it's the death clause of that. It will be, but it will cause a new dialogue in consideration of all the circumstances that have changed. So it's not a bad thing.
Okay, thank you. All right, just real quick, we've got Liz and Becky running the screen up front, and we have Sam Lights Out McGrath up front on the lights. Liz, this is in regards to House Bill 1075. Is there any chance of reviving any of the bills to lower the state sales tax on groceries?
Okay, Mike Derby, District 34. So the question is, will that come back in this session, repeal the sales tax on food, correct?
Yes, as far as reviving any of the bills in regards to the grocery tax.
Okay, as Senator Dietrich said, there's 4 days left. There's a lot of mechanisms for bills that have been killed to come back. They can be hog housed, which means you take a bill and you put new language into a bill. We're heading into conference committee world, which means you have 3 from each house get together. Things can be introduced there. So I would say never. I'm reasonably confident you probably will see this again in some shape or form.
Okay, thank you. Senator, or Representative Derby. The next question we have is in regards to House Bill 1109. The governor vetoed 1109. What are the odds it will be overturned? What concessions would you be willing to make to override the veto? For example, could residents of South Dakota be exempt from the bid tax?
Okay, I'll take the last part first. Not every motel is under a bid. So you can find motels in Rapid City, for example, if you have 50 rooms or under, you're not charged the bid tax. And I think in Brookings, it's 40 rooms or under. So there are ways to work around being charged the bid tax. But I was talking to somebody yesterday and I said, well, okay, let's say it does go up to the maximum $4. Well, that's about the price of a beer downtown. So I guess, I don't know what we're really arguing about for that portion of it, but it's an up to, it's permissive language. We're gonna have to work really hard to veto this bill. This is not gonna be an easy lift, but we've done things that aren't easy lifts before. I think it's a great opportunity for us to keep this going because the bid districts do a lot of things. So in Rapid City, they sponsor the LNI, the stock show, and the powwow, just to name a few. They brought in the consultant that helped get Main Street Square going, which, you know, that's a jewel for Rapid City. And they were the ones that brought in that consultant to get that up and going. In Fort Pierre, they're planning to do a river walk. And how beautiful would that be? To have a nice river walk all lit up to be able to walk on. So, and the other thing that's important about this is these people use that funding to market to bring conventions here. And we are competing for those conventions. They are not gonna just come here because we have a beautiful place to live. And it's not just us, it's Mitchell, it's Brookings, it's Sioux Falls. They're all competing for conventions to come to their communities. And when those convention people come in, probably hundreds at a time, they're bringing what? Their dollars with them, which improves our economy. Tourism is the second largest revenue generator in South Dakota. And who generates those dollars? It's usually the municipalities. Now, I'm not saying that the Department of Tourism doesn't do a great job with their marketing. They do, it's fantastic. But let's allow these local communities to promote themselves locally to bring in revenue so we can continue to grow and thrive.
I agree. Tourism is a competitive business, and we all benefit. We know the benefits out here, out west, but it's across the state. And I have to remind everybody, 78 to 80% of this fee, and it's a business fee, is paid for by out-of-state people. And you know what tourism saves each of us? We each benefit to the tune of $1,000 per person, roughly $1,011 per person, because we have tourism in our state. This is a shame. I hope we can rise up and fight this. This is enabling legislation. When you come to Rapid City, you can stay out a little bit further if you don't want to stay in a hotel that's in this business improvement district. But yes, there are medical rates and other things. We need to do this for the communities that want to, enabling legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Duffy, District 32. This is kind of what I referred to a little bit ago. And Becky, sorry about that, Representative Drury, you start to know these people, you forget the titles. But I was on the floor and I wasn't sure I heard what I thought I heard when they said that the governor had vetoed this bill. And I started getting comments from people that are involved right away. So I said, well, okay, let me ask around a little bit. But I mean, so I looked at how the bill came and what path it came through on both sides. And I don't know if you saw how she vetoed this bill. She just didn't sign it. She put a brand on this bill, so she's very confident, I think, that's gonna hold because, you know, she made a big position on it. Having said that, there's a lot of people, I think, that are supportive of it. You know, like the leader, Republican leader, he voted against it, and he's from Fort Pierce, so now we have something to talk to him about. But anyway, I think it'll be an uphill battle, no question about it.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question, three-part question. Oh, excuse me, four-part. What is the Uniform Commercial Code? Why is it important? Why is it being amended? And how will you vote on an override of a possible veto? I don't know if you saw it, but the mics just did paper, scissors, rock under the table.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lawyer, so I've studied the Uniform Commercial Code in law school, and it was in effect for at least 100 years, maybe 110 years before it was my turn to study it in law school. So it's nothing new. Uniform Commercial Code. What is Uniform Commercial Code? It's basically the rules of commercial transactions that are common. It covers almost it does cover every transaction that you have, whether you buy a car, you buy a house, whether you get a lien, whether you have a security interest, how does your money transfer from that bank to this bank, how does your debit card, credit card dollars get moved around. It covers every aspect, shipment of goods and services, virtually every aspect of commercial transactions. And why is it important is to have some uniformity throughout the United States. The states get together their representatives on the Uniform Law Committee, and they take a look at that stuff, and they look at, okay, what have we done, where are things going, and we want to have uniformity. Otherwise, the feds are going to start sticking their nose and issue a bunch of regulations, and we believe it's better to have the states do all their input and then determine what's best in their state on a local basis, trying to maintain that uniformity. So that's why it's important. That's how it happens. There are uniform commercial code updates, periodic. This year it was 118 pages. I read it, and I marked it up, but I forgot to bring it. It's sitting by my nightstand. It's a good sleep material, by the way. Anyway, so that's why it's important. And what was the other two? There are two other questions that I'm sorry.
Why is it being amended? Mm-hmm. And how will you vote on an override of a possible veto?
Why is it amended? Well, it's just time to do it, and all the states are probably going to take a look at this legislation this year. South Dakota happens to be one of the first legislatures that's kick in. We're the second Tuesday in January. So what we do is makes us sort of cutting edge in the sense that we're the first ones to do it, but all the other states are going to be looking at it too. This bill has a deferred implementation date. It's not effective until July 1 of 2024. So that most of the other legislation that we do is just by Constitution will be effective on July 1 of this year, the year in which it's passed, unless you do an emergency clause to get it in earlier. So there's a year time, and so I've heard discussions both ways. Well, if we're not sure and we're the first ones doing it, why don't we wait a year? and put it into effect. And then the counter to that is, well, why don't we put it in effect? And if we realize there are things that need to be changed, we can do it in the next session because the law will not have become effective before next session's over. It won't be for 18 months, basically, or a little less than that. But so that's kind of the process. How will we vote? Well, I think I'll guess on everybody. No, I think it's reasonable to adopt it. I've read through the definition of money. I mean, you go back to the commercial code. It was back when we used horses and buggies to transport stuff, and they had to think, oh, we got railroads. Now, how are we going to deal with having uniform laws to address how goods are shipped via railroads? Did the railroads, then more the highways and all of that. So you're always looking forward. We have digital.
I'm sorry, Senator, I need to cut you off.
Okay.
Yes or no?
I voted for it.
Okay,
I voted for it.
thank you.
So I would say on this uniform commercial code, South Dakota is a banking state. That's where we make our bread and butter in Sioux Falls. Every banking organization, every business group, every retail group all supported this. I think some people kind of get worked up about it. Conspiracy radio has made it into something it is not. But again, if we find out we don't like it, we can make a change next year. But this will go through in every state of the country, and we think it makes sense. And I don't know that there would be a veto, but if so, I guess I would vote against, override.
Okay. Next question comes from Jeff Partridge. You all voted yes on Senate Bill 40. Although it changed as it went through the process, are you happy with how it ended?
Good morning, Jess Olson, District 34. So just to give you a little background on Senate Bill 40, that was the bill that would have put the positions, the statewide positions on the primary ballot. So like your Secretary of State, et cetera, not just the governor. And that came out of some concerns of how the process has been going with the GOP convention. But where it got amended to was to just simply be that the governor picks their lieutenant governor. And we thought that made good sense, and so there was consensus around that, and that was the final version. So I'm satisfied with that version, and I think we'll have to see how the new leadership of the statewide GOP handles things before we make more steps forward. Thanks.
I'm on the opposing view. Did any of you guys, anybody in this room get to vote who, if you're Republican, who the Republican nominee was for Attorney General? I didn't. Why don't you get to vote? Why is it just a small select group? It's almost a 1950s thing. In a dark room, smoke-filled room, a group emerges and tells us who our nominee is. I don't think that's fair. I think in this day and age that these statewide constitutional offices should be something that you get to vote for in a primary, just like each of us, we have to go through a primary. And I think the time has come where we all get to vote on those important races. And I think we saw in particular with Attorney General Ravnsborg that there were some flaws in the system. And maybe now is the time for us to make this change. Thank you.
You know, I was the same way on Senate Bill 40. I guess I didn't think about it for anything that happened at the state convention for decades. Long before I ever thought of being a legislator, I wanted to vote for the Attorney General and Secretary of State. I thought it should actually be expanded to other offices. But that was the thing about me, is I wanted to be able to vote. And I assumed a lot of people wanted to be able to vote for those offices. So that's why I initially thought it was a good bill. I mean, it did get amended, and I supported the amendment, and I supported the bill as amended. But that was my thought, is just that we should all be able to vote for those Attorney General and the other offices.
Very good. Thank you. One more? Okay.
Just a piece of information. We're one of only 3 states that do it that method. Every other state has a different process. Most of them are the primary election processes. And if for some reason a party can't come up with the candidates in time for the primary, they can still appoint in the same process they do now at their party convention that is after the primary. So it won't leave any holes, and we're one of the few states that don't do it that way.
Okay. Next question is from Jason Solomon. And this is in regards to Senate Bill 146. Thank you to all who supported SB 146, which helps ensure violent offenders serve the appropriate time for their crime. As we move forward, will you work to help support counties in adding needed jail and prison space as well as effective rehabilitation?
You know, I've said this again and again, but we have a whole crowd. Lock them up and throw away the key. But those are the same people that will refer a bond and will fight us building a jail and will fight the funding. And we've seen this even in the House. We tried to set aside, while we had money, $50 million for seed money and revolving loan funds to help counties build and afford and operate these jails. It was shot down on Thursday. We looked for a regional jail authority to help counties more fairly spread out the risk and the costs of operating. It was shot down again in the House on Thursday. We have to do something, not just for our state prison system that we've neglected for years, and it will be rebuilt, and it will be rebuilt smarter. But, you know, we need to re-envision what we're doing. So much of our problem is addiction. And I think right now, as we're rebuilding our corrections, why not make one whole facility just about addiction? And maybe it's a European model, and it's secure, but it's more like dorms. It's not like even a prison. And you get out as soon as you graduate from your addiction program. The incentive is you get out if you do the work to tackle your addictions. I wish we would really reimagine, because that's our biggest problem out here. But corrections cost money, and we need to figure out a way to help the counties, the one thing they're constitutionally required to do. And we're doing all the work we need at the state prison system, but we got to help the counties, and that is not happening. But we're sure talking about it a lot, and hopefully we can get some people to realize we're in a crisis situation at the county level, and these are the criminals that are causing us issues. These parole and probation violators that are just coming back again and again and again and creating chaos in our communities. Thank you.
So we had a meeting with some of the county and city folks before we went to the legislature. And this is one of the things they asked us for was tougher sentencing. And in my district, when you walk door to door, I've gone to people's houses and they say, "Are you by yourself?" And I go, "Well, yeah, if this isn't safe, you shouldn't be up here, but you shouldn't be walking around here by yourself." We have people that are scared, and people should not have to live in fear. And I think this bill was one step towards that. Now, for the regional jails, I wasn't the prime on that. I had signed on to it. I gave it my all on the House floor to try to get that bill to move through. But you know, the people that stopped it were the people that were from the rural areas, because they don't want their property taxes to be paid for. Even though the mechanism that Senator Duhamel came up that was based on the railroad authorities would have spread that cost out and made it affordable, they just couldn't see past it. So I felt kind of bad that we had a lot of people on board, but we couldn't get it through. But at the same time, if you're not going to vote for something, for a solution, then by golly, you need to come with the solution next time. So that's kind of where I left it after that failed on the House floor. I thought, okay, you guys step up and come up with a solution. We've tried a couple of years. I was in tax 2 years before this. We passed a couple bills out, letting counties bond and all the different alternatives, and they all got shot down. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but evidently we haven't found it yet. Or we did find it, we didn't like it.
Jess Olson, District 34. So I have a slightly different perspective on this, and this is where Helene and I tend to be on opposing sides of things, but that's what's important about the discussion. So I think these are two different things. 146 was about it was called truth in sentencing, and I voted against that. I also voted against the men's prison. So my perspective is a little different, and it was because on 146, the truth in sentencing, the Department of Corrections actually testified against this bill. Why would the Department of Corrections testify against this bill? Because what it did is for people who are violent offenders, and we say you're going to do your whole sentence and you're not going to have the opportunity for parole. What that does in a prison setting is create a very violent setting. That is why the Department of Corrections was against it, because you want individuals motivated to rehabilitate and be on good behavior. When you take that away, then we're taking that away from some of the toughest offenders we have. So that's a slightly different thing than the jails. But the other part with the prisons and why I voted against the men's prison, and I voted for the women's prison because we were doing that incrementally. We did the land and the plan last year, and then we're going to do the next phase this year. Where we're going to have a problem with money on the prisons is we have about $300 million in ongoing additional revenue than what we usually do. So that's when we talk about funding the providers at 100%, that's $30 million. And you talk about funding these other ones, and that takes a chunk. And then we're gonna have to put aside money for Medicaid as the federal reimbursement rolls off. So we wanna stockpile for that. So that's gonna be 50, 60 million if we're smart. And then we're gonna do a tax cut of 100 million. So we've been putting aside money over the last few years of that surplus revenue. Like you have a good year in business, you set it aside for a rainy day. We've been doing that. We've got about 300 million for the prison. But on 146, when we do this and we eliminate parole and we eliminate incentives, we will have a prison that's not 500 million, but I believe it will be 600 to 700 or 800 million. And then we're taking away our ability to stockpile reserves to pay for that. So I wanted to just take a slower approach to that, especially because we were having 146 come up. And I think we're gonna see some unintended consequences of that, and we'll have a concern on that, and that may change later on. But for jails and counties, I definitely think, and that's what I was talking about, the summer studies. We're deciding summer studies. I've been a big advocate for that. I think we're hearing some counties are bankrupt, but it's not all, it's about a third. So a one-size-fits-all model isn't gonna work, and we need to spend the time this summer working on that. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. We've touched on this a little bit, or when I say we, you have touched on this somewhat in some of the opening remarks, but I'm going to read it again and give anybody that wants to talk on this a little bit more time, and it's in regards to the tax cuts. Each of the proposed tax cuts have roughly comparable budget impacts. The proposed property tax relief has a higher dollar value per household because not everyone is eligible. Why would we prioritize more tax relief for property owners rather than a more broadly distributed but smaller benefit? And I know that's been discussed, but I wanted to give anybody else a chance to discuss that if you wanted.
Could I get you to repeat that real quick, just so I make sure I get it right?
Certainly. Each of the proposed tax cuts have roughly comparable budget impacts. The proposed property tax relief has a higher dollar value per household because not everyone is eligible. Why would we prioritize more tax relief for property owners rather than a more broadly distributed but smaller benefit?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm Kurt Massey, Representative District 33, but I supported the reduction of state tax on food. That was kind of my big thing. I know the property tax, I got a lot of emails on that, but it really was just for people in owner-occupied homes. And if you're living in an apartment complex, you're not going to get that benefit. So in caucus, I supported reducing the food tax. I thought that was more equitable. Everybody's got to eat. We all shop at the grocery store. So that was my big thing. I guess I was kind of disappointed when it didn't go through. But like it's been mentioned, it was, a caucus decision. So I know my property taxes went up 20%. The actual check I've got to write, and it's a burden. I mean, I worked for the Department of Revenue for 24 years. I used to take phone calls from elderly people who are struggling to pay their property taxes. And we have to, I think we still always have to look at, to do something, because a lot of people, on those phone calls, I mean, they were concerned that they're not going to be able to stay in their homes. And a lot of people, those are people that work very hard to build our state and our communities. So we need to continue to look out for them. So I think we always need to look at property tax reduction probably every year. We need to find something. And a lot of it is controlling costs. I mean, I've got a business degree. I also farm and ranch, and I've got my consulting business. But I know that this summer the bearing went out of my baler, my round baler, and it cost me $400 just in parts to fix it. So you have to spend money, and that's what we have to do. But the state should look at also trying to control costs. I mean, where does all our money go? Do we need to spend this much money? So we do need to look at property tax reduction. But as I said, I was kind of a big supporter of the food tax. It's probably not going to happen, but I guess never say never.
I will say again, I have heard most people saying, don't do anything, fix your house, take care of all the problems you have, then see where we're at in a couple of years. But we've all been campaigning, those of us who walk neighborhoods. If I heard anything, it was about property taxes. And right now, as people are getting theirs, it is property taxes. The Senate plan is the check to each person who has an owner-occupied home for $425. Meaningful, would be helpful, people paying their taxes. You won't notice the grocery, you won't notice the sales tax, and our tourists will benefit from that. This is the one way we thought we could really target South Dakota people who are struggling to afford their property taxes.
Process-wise, for those of you who have a specific interest in anything that might be hanging out there right now, and we'll use the tax reduction concepts as an example. So these last 4 days, there's not a normal committee schedule. The House and the Senate just go into session at whatever time of the day is appropriate for them, depending on what's going on in the morning. But it's not regular committees. So if you've got a bill number and you want to follow it, or you want to advocate pro or con on it, you need to take a look and see where it's at and whether it's been amended or changed. And then if it's been changed by the House, the second House, and then it has to go back for concurrence in the changes for the Senate. Say the Senate passes a bill, House amends it, then they have to send it back and say, do you guys concur with our amendments? And if we say yes, it goes down to the second floor. If we say no, that's when we do these conference committees that will be happening. They are scheduled, they're short period of notice, but they are public, and it'll tell you the bill and this, and then that's where we start get into the position of if you're a legislator who's really invested in or has a strong opinion on a bill, you want to be one of those 3 people from either House, 6 total, to be on that committee, because you can have more influence on advocating or suggesting changes at that point in time. But it moves quick, and what you see may not be what it really is. And so you got to follow that around, and you do have there's enough time to provide input. It would be, unless you're there in person, you would have to do it electronically. But it's really it's hard for us, and I think it's really hard for the general public to follow this last stage. And so the other thing is we've got both bills on both sides. We have vehicles, and it's all remains to be negotiated. We don't know if it's going to be sales tax reduction, if it's going to be property tax reduction, or a grocery tax elimination. It all depends on what happens in these next few days as these competing views negotiate among the House and the Senate as to the way we want the state's revenue source stream and what's fiscally responsible in the future, what provides benefit to our citizens in South Dakota. It's all in. It's like making a smoothie in the morning. We're gonna hit the button and see what comes out, and hopefully we'll have a consensus on it. And so could be anything. Don't count anything down at all at this point.
Okay, just one more follow-up question on this same topic, so we can get this one going, and this will be the last one, I promise. Why resist property tax relief to owner-occupied? Renters, people of all ages, get the tax passed on by the landlord. Why not help the renters too? Now that may have kind of already been covered, but if there's anything you want to add to that. Representative Derby, thank you.
If I understand the question correctly, Mike Derby, District 34, yes, you have owner occupied, that's what we targeted. And then there's the category other, which is commercial and non-owner occupied. And to do that, it was just a bridge too far, to be honest. Owner occupied came in the 70 million range when we just dealt with that. At the time, the governor's proposal was 102 million for repealing the food tax. And so the governor set the bar by saying we've got 300 million in new ongoing revenue. We can take out 100 million. So we believe her. And so the counter proposal was to do owner occupied. It was 100,000 originally would be, the term would be reduce 100,000 of your assessed value, exempt it. And so that's how we landed on the number. It was about 70 million. That got amended. And then it was $300 for a tax credit. And now the Senate has moved it up to 425, which is about 104 million. So we're all working in that same metric. So realistically, to do anything other than owner occupied was just too big of a number, just a bridge too far, and we had to start somewhere.
Okay, thank you, Representative Derby. All right, we're going to move on. And where is Senator Johnson when you need him? Senate Bill 148 and 158 are what we'll talk about, Liz. These bills would have made investments in Rapid City and South Dakota airports. These bills would have helped to leverage millions from the FAA, covering up to 70% of the total cost. What happened to these bills?
Steve Duffy, District 32. I'm not exactly sure what happened to 148 in the in appropriations. I just know it went away. 158, I did talk to that bill in both caucus and on the floor. It was not on the priority list. I talked about the benefits of an airport. Airport is just infrastructure. It's not. Maybe at one time it was a luxury. It is an absolute infrastructure to make a community and a region go. Our airport does, in the summer months, we have more activity than the Sioux Falls Airport, a town that's three times our size. Now, obviously, that's not year-round. Nevertheless, those people, tons of those people, they bring their money. We don't school their kids. They don't spend much time on our roads. They leave money and they go home. I was really disappointed in that, but I took a severe shellacking, so I did learn my lesson. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Access to health care in rural South Dakota is a challenge, and West River is in the midst of a nursing shortage. What is the status of Senate Bill 172, and do you support it?
true, right? Yeah. This is really an important component of building up healthcare provider workforce for South Dakota. This is related to the nursing programs in South Dakota, and there are three primary nursing programs that registered nurses could graduate from, and licensed practical nurses as well, and then allied health professions. This is the building that is known as the Black Hills State University Extension Building out by Waikiki. There's a building out there. And the project is to combine these programs with SDSU and Black Hills State to provide, increase the number of students that can attend and achieve their degree in nursing. So the program will double. Right now they can have a cohort, a class of about 70 students. With these improvements that will come from expanding the program and reinvesting, doing some reinvestment with local matches as well as some state money and some federal dollars to provide the appropriate facilities, we'll double that to close to 140 nursing students that could graduate in a year. So that is, and Senator Partridge, this is one of his, he was instrumental in getting it going and fought for it for quite a while, and I'm glad that you can see it come to fruition. So there are some inflationary cost overrides for construction that we need to make up, and as we look at that as a legislature, we try to be prudent and we say, okay, if the dirt's been moved and they're in construction, that's can be distinguished from a planning and design stage. So if the ground's been broken, construction's going, the inflationary cost overruns are fairly closely identified, accurately identified and verified, whereas in the others we still don't know. So it was really important to get funding for this area. These students will work in nursing homes, long-term care homes, assisted living, hospitals, clinics throughout western South Dakota. And we found that, and we'll have a lot of students from West River, because they don't want to go East River, because they have family here, they might have kids here, their husband or wife may work here, and some of them have told me they just don't want to move to East River, so they're very happy to be able to tap this program. So it should increase not only the number available throughout the state, but it'll increase the number available in South Dakota, and it'll be primary South Dakota students in this program. So, and it passed the House yesterday. I think this one will make it all the way through. I think there's a lot of consensus on this one at this point.
I was just going to say the backstory here is these were ARPA dollars. They were fully funded last year. This particular nursing program and one at SDSU. We've been waiting for the federal government to approve the spending of these dollars. So far, they've only approved really water and broadband. So we don't think we're going to have the answer until August on whether or not these will be eligible for ARPA dollars. So we put in some funds to help with the planning, the getting ready for so like in the neighborhood of $2 to $5 million on both of these programs just to get them started. So hopefully they will get the ARPA dollars, but we did that last session.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Next question is directed to Representative Massey. Doesn't splitting up the big three enable lobbyists to win? Wouldn't this divert precious resources from teachers or caregivers to lobbying efforts?
Well, thank you for that question. I guess, we've talked about it. I mean, I'm not the only one that has discussed this, but it's just something where we were trying to get more focus on teachers and education as being more separate, because teachers put in a lot of hard work. I mean, state employees work very hard. I worked for the state of South Dakota for 24 years. I guess I didn't see it that way. It's something definitely to take into consideration and talk about, but I know I've had many conversations in peer about trying to get more money for education for teachers. So it's just an idea. It's just something, and like I said, I'm not alone over there of thinking that would be a better option for education. So it's just something to talk about.
I just wanted to give a little clarity to that I don't think it's going to be an issue for the lobbyists. The history on combining the big three sort of, it came from one of our current representatives now when he was serving in the governor's office, because it's actually the state employees who don't have any lobbying entity. So when I started 5 years ago, we weren't talking about 300 million in ongoing revenue. We were fighting in about small amounts of money. Could we even get up to the 3% for schools? And so at that time, we would look at all three to take care of them. We want to look at breaking them apart now, because if you do a 5% for state employees, it's directly to their paycheck, and that's fine. But if you do 5% to schools, that's not a direct paycheck to the teachers. That's to the system to cover other expenses, and they get a part of that. So that's why we want to, and it's the same for healthcare. When we give an increase to a provider, it's not directly to a salary. So that's the distinction on those three groups, and the distinction really between Medicaid and education and state employees. So it is reasonable that we would break them apart. And so it's not really a lobbyist winning issue. It's just more of a fairness issue. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right. Liz, Senate Bill 1. Where do you stand on Senate Bill 1, which amends medical conditions that are eligible for medical cannabis?
Well, I'll just talk on this one for a minute. Jess Wilson, District 34. I just got an email about this, so I was looking at it. And what it finally does is it adds PTSD to the criteria in which someone can qualify for a medical cannabis card. That's been a little bit long overdue in addressing the issue I always heard from veterans, and so I'm very much in support of SB 1. Thanks.
Okay, big difference here. The Department of Health, we want to make these important health decisions on which diseases do or do not qualify for medical cannabis. And the research that I've seen, and I have a mountain of it, I have my own file, it does not help with PTSD. It doesn't mean that some veterans will say that they've seen relief. But doctors don't want to do anything and prescribe a medicine just because somebody thinks it might help them or they heard that it might help them if there's no research. Now, there's a problem because there is not a lot of research to show that marijuana helps anything. And part of that is because it's federally illegal. But I hate to have this medical oversight committee be able to tell us, and this group is not made of medical providers, it's predominantly law enforcement and cannabis providers and facilities and this and that, and patients. We want the Department of Health to make those decisions on when a disease does or does not qualify. And glaucoma in particular was one that we had people say it actually makes it worse and doesn't help. So that was finally amended out, but PTSD is still on there. And I have a problem with that. And not because I don't want people to have access to something that helps, but doctors ought to be making those decisions and not a marijuana oversight committee that's not made up of the medical community.
Okay, thank you. It's always a fun topic. For me, anyway. Okay, there are several bills that provide funding for water projects. How are each of the bills different, and what is the status of each of the water projects?
Only one water bill is still alive, and that is these ARPA dollars that must be spent by December of 2026. So I found them sitting there, and I said, hey, let's do something. And I recognize the Department of Ag and Natural Resources. They say they're tired. They pushed out, or in the process of pushing out, $660 million to every corner of the state. But we have this $100 million sitting there, and it needs to be spent. It has that same timeline. So I think we should think seriously about our water needs, true infrastructure, true conservative government. We know that that pipeline to bring Missouri River water to western South Dakota could be in the $2 billion price tag range. The Lewis and Clark just coming online, fully coming online after some 40 years, and they want a second Lewis and Clark. They're calling it Dakota Main Stem that will serve Mitchell, twice the diameter, 6-foot diameter, and then the Winds, Webb, Aberdeen. We have needs for water in every part of our state, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime golden opportunity. Now, the other thing I tried unsuccessfully was, in our state, we only fund water with lotto fees and tank inspection fees, and that is about $12 million a year ongoing, hasn't increased in 30 years. So I went looking for more funding for our state water projects that don't have these ARPA guidelines, because we're going to need to fund water in a big way in the future. And so I found a fund, and a House committee shot me down again. But the point is, we're elevating the conversation. We're opening people's eyes, because there is nothing more basic than water. And with Western South Dakota, in our needs and our growing population, we don't have rural water systems. People just sink wells. And within our lifetime, 20 to 50 years, the streams and lakes will start drying up, because everything is the Madison Aquifer and it's not recharging fast enough. School of Mines did a study. They're going to update that study based on population growth. This is something we all should be paying attention to, should prioritize. And when I hear we have $100 million ongoing we don't need, I said, wait. We actually do need that. And this is how we could use it. Thank you.
Mike Derby, District 34. There's only one thing I want to add, and that is whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting. Thank you.
And you could share your flask with us. Just kidding, of course. Okay. Senator Duhamel mentioned a new model for incarcerated women. Can we ensure that rehabilitation and prevention will be a priority? And this question came to us online.
We have a great new Secretary of Corrections, and I think for her it is a priority, but I do think we need to think outside the box and reimagine. But I just want to say that women's facility out here, so we bought the land last year, and this year we are going to approve $60 million to build it. 300 beds, and this is because the women's facility in Pierre, 9 bunks to a room, severely overcrowded, a lawsuit waiting to happen, and no room for the rehabilitation. But it's out by the outdoor mall, just south of Feeding, South Dakota, just south of those railroad tracks, if you can envision where this facility will be. And they will prioritize job training, rehab for drug and alcohol, skill building. So the goal is 1/3 of the women that are incarcerated are for drug and alcohol issues, and they're from Minnehaha and Pennington County. So we get that facility out here, we keep them close to their home, close to their support system, and in a work release situation, they get jobs, maybe in the service industry, maybe in retail, right out there nearby. They keep those jobs when they graduate. So this is a smart process and a smart first step into what we're trying to do to think about how we're going to better reimagine incarceration needs.
Okay. All right. This could be trouble. So we're going to 15 minutes. Okay. This will probably be the last question, it looks like. Okay. So what are your top 3 priorities for the closing days? Or a top priority? Or your top 4? Top 5?
Well, I'll let Representative Derby talk about the finances, because that's really what we're going to do for the next 3-4 days. So I'm going to, be around and waiting, and like most everybody else who's not in appropriations. But I think that the daycare summer study is going to be a really key thing. So my priority over the next few days is talking to other legislators and making sure that we do a daycare summer study and a county funding summer study. So that's my focus for the next few days.
Becky Drury, District 32. My priorities override that House bill, 1109. I'll be talking to anybody I can that voted against it prior and the ones that voted for it to assure that they will keep their vote going. That's the priority. And then, as I mentioned when I first stood up here, was the SB 70, protecting those victims, those children in the courtrooms. That's a huge thing that's laid on my heart to do. And then shoring up our provisions for what it consists of, what a rape actually consists of legally, technically, and then also the ban on the ordinances. Those are my priorities. Thank you.
Mike Derby, District 34. And part of it, I'll be speaking kind of caucus priorities, but as an appropriator, number one is to balance the state budget. South Dakota, in the Constitution, says that we will have a balanced budget. And we've been doing this for over 130 years. And so that's my number one priority. That's, I think, the legislature's number one priority. Coming from the caucus, I think there's a consensus in regards to the Medicaid providers, moving that to 100% methodology. I think that's important. And then you'll see probably a movement for the big three. And I think Representative Olson put it succinctly. I'm in favor of kind of unbundling that whole thought process again. But you'll hear some movement towards going above 5%. How that all shakes out is to be determined.
Steve Duffy, District 32. As a first-year person, I don't dilute myself that I have a huge amount of impact here, but that bid tax did really, it bothered me worse than I thought it did, and I would do anything I could, and I would encourage all of you to do anything you could to help us. I mean, that is such a good economic engine for our area. And, so that's the first thing, the three tax proposals, I voted on the reduction in the overall general sales tax. That made, the governor feels very strongly about the grocery tax, and she's a force. So, that may well be where that ends up. And if that is, I will definitely fall in line. But I hope we can look down the road far enough to see we do have quite a few needs in this state, and we have the ARPA money, we have inflation. We do have a lot of things in the air. So I sure would like to go a little slower on that. Thank you.
Kurt Massey, District 33. I guess my priorities for the ending of session here is to work together with the Senate to get some kind of tax reduction. I think it's important that we put money back into the pockets of South Dakotans. And we all know they're gonna spend that money, and it's gonna go back into our economy. So I think it's an important thing to do, and I think we need to look and work with the Senate. I think we always need to continue to look at our property taxes. I think that's something we need to talk about, even over the summer before next session. So the main thing is to get money back in the pockets of South Dakotans through tax reduction, and I hope we can get it done.
Water, a balanced budget, with whatever we decide, we need, and I would still hope I know the House killed 2 important bills on for counties, tools that they need, but if there's any way to bring either of those back, the House put on an amendment that was a poison pill that really required 2/3 majority, and it wasn't needed. I don't know if we can resurrect that, but that regional jail authority and/or some money for counties is sorely needed, and now.
Mike Diedrich, District 34. One of my priorities is that as we go through, determine what the most appropriate and feasible tax relief we can provide for the citizens of South Dakota. My goal is for us to do that in a fiscally responsible and sustainable manner, and in a way that provides the most impact. So as a leader on the Senate side, my priority is to continue to facilitate and participate in the discussions between the House and the Senate as we iron out, with the appropriators, as we iron out the differences between the priorities of each caucus. So each caucus gets together and talks about what are our priorities, and a lot of them match, a lot of them are aligned on each side, but a lot of them aren't too. And so as we work through that, my priority is that we get it done, and we do it with respect and the proper decorum to do that. Another, unrelated to the last 4 days, except for the decision of what studies we might propose for the summer, I think it's really important that we study the long-term care, elder care, health care for our aging population, and how we provide it. How does the state reimburse for it? What efficiencies are there? How do we develop or maintain a workforce for that? All of the things that go with that are critical, because if we piecemeal approach this stuff over and over and over, we're never going to come up with the right package. And there's models that have been tried, that are being experimented with right now in different countries, as well as in the United States, that have different ways of providing that in the best way, in the most respectful way. So I think we need to do that, but we have to focus. When you do a summer study, you got to focus on an issue so that you can come up with a solution. If we just get together and talk about, oh gosh, we don't have enough providers, it costs too much money, we're losing facilities, oh my, we're never going to get a solution. If we go in and we say, okay, is it the reimbursement part? Is it the aging facility part? The facilities are falling apart because the cost reimbursement doesn't include, the costs do not include the maintenance and repair of those facilities. And so that's why we have so many of them closing as well. So we need to get a laser focus on how do we improve the care that we're going to provide for our elderly population and contain those costs for the state of South Dakota. And then world peace would be awesome. I'd like that too.
Can't end on a better note than that. So, as I've closed the question part, I do want to thank all the legislators for being here. Your work is truly appreciated, and oftentimes not appreciated enough. I'd like to thank all the audience members for coming out today, the staff at Elevate. Thank you for all that you do to make this happen. And to Dr. Bowman and Western Dakota Tech for allowing us to continue to use this facility. So this will conclude the Cracker Barrel season for 2023. But as you leave, keep in mind, as you've heard, there's 4 days left to reach out to your legislators if they're not here that you